Hello everybody, welcome along to a bonus episode, the very first bonus episode that we've ever done because we're excited. So for anyone who may be listening for the very first time, you have stumbled upon the wondrous world of Dan and Frankie Go to Hollywood. I'm Dan.
And I'm Frankie.
I can verify that, and we are here today, or tonight, wherever you're listening, to discuss a little movie that Frankie stumbled upon recently and forced me to watch. No, she didn't. I did it of my own accord. Called Prisoners from 2013, directed by Denis Villeneuve.
Say it properly as well.
Villeneuve. Okay, Denis Villeneuve. Is that better? Come on, it's spelt like another word, so
Denis for those who like
don't act like a 5-year-old. Yeah, okay, fine. I'm gonna keep calling him Denis, but anyway. So we've just, I mean, this movie's been out for 11 years now, and we've only just come across it. What's wrong with us?
I do not know what was going on in 2013, but I do not remember ever hearing about this film, unless I just heard the title and thought it was something else.
Well, yeah, I kind of had that as well.
So, in a different way.
Yeah. So, look, here's the thing. If you have come from our episode of our regular podcast where we have talked about it a little bit, we're going to be treading over some familiar ground here because obviously there are going to be people who have only just come across this episode and are like, oh, we want to hear about Prisoners. We don't care what else Dan and Frankie have to say. So, yeah, I did have a little mix-up, if you will, where another movie from 2013 called Escape Plan, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, came out, and I didn't pay enough attention to either that or Prisoners, and over the years the two films have merged into one, and so I thought there was a movie called Prisoners, directed by Denis, starring Schwarzenegger and Stallone, where they've got to break out of a prison because, you know, they're prisoners. And then, yeah, last week Frankie watched Prisoners and was like, oh my god, this is the best movie I've seen this year and stuff. And I'm just like, how can a cheesy Schwarzenegger movie be that amazing? And then, yeah, of course, once I read about it and you told me more, I could not wait to jump into it. So, yes, I am very grateful for you stumbling upon that. So, what was it that actually inspired you to watch it? Like, what...
Oh, the wonder of movie podcasts.
Right.
I was listening to Film Feast, who every year do Best Discoveries of the Year episodes. And so at the end of the year, last year, I was listening to their one from their 2022 favorites, and one of the guys said Prisoners. And started talking about it, saying how intense it was and stressful. And Hugh Jackman's in it playing like a father, sort of kind of going after someone that he thinks abducted his daughter or whatever. And I was just like, oh, that's pretty dark for Hugh Jackman, because I think of, you know, Greatest Showman and Kate and Leopold and things like that. And so I haven't really seen him be really intense. And so I put it on my watch list straight away and, you know, got distracted by Christmas and work and stuff. And then I was just going through my watch list the other week and went, oh yeah, that's that movie. I'm really curious. So I rented it and watched it and had no idea it was going to become an all-time favorite. It was just captivating from start to finish. And not just because of Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie, who I had never been a huge fan of, but I think that's going to change now.
Yeah. Look, the last time I ever saw Hugh Jackman that intense was when he was in a camping supply store. Intense. Anyway, all right. So moving on. I'm not editing that out.
Preparing your dad jokes.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm qualified now. Also, for anyone who did actually listen to our last podcast episode, I do want to take a moment to apologize for the audio quality from my end. I had some kind of technical hiccup. I cleaned it up as best as I could, but it was nowhere near the quality that I strive for, and I was completely showed up by the consummate professional that is Frankie. So yes, we're back to me sounding normal now, for whatever lack of a better word. So yeah, look, this movie, it is about two families who come together on Thanksgiving dinner, and their respective daughters go missing, really young girls. We've got Hugh Jackman and Maria Bello, as one couple, and Terrence Howard and Viola Davis as the other couple. Meanwhile, Paul Dano plays this kind of weird, creepy guy who initially you think, oh, he did it, because he was driving around in an RV, which the girls were playing near, so of course, naturally it must be him. So, of course, the girls go missing. The families go absolutely berserk trying to find their kids. Jake Gyllenhaal plays Detective David Loki, arguably the coolest name for a detective in the history of cinema. He's assigned to the case, and basically it becomes this big, complex weave of mystery and suspense and tension and red herrings. This has more red herrings than the Seattle Fish Market. It was just fascinating from start to finish. Now, we're going to really get into this. We're going to absolutely analyze this film. We're going to, go into a lot of... Frankie's actually done a lot more research than I have. What sort of things have you been looking at?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a lot of research. I watched a few short interview things on YouTube, and then a half-hour one with Jake Gyllenhaal this morning, which was pretty amazing. But that's my research. I just watched a few interviews.
Yeah, which right now people are going committing to a half-hour interview for a movie discussion. That's a lot of research.
Oh, that was one of the best interviews I've ever watched, because it was so focused on his character and the movie that it didn't feel like half an hour.
Right.
And that's not a lot of research.
Well, you did more than I did, that's for sure. We both have just sat down and rewatched it right before recording this. And so, I guess we'll kind of go through the film from start to finish. So, for me, one of the things that really grabbed me the first time I watched it, and I kind of forgot about because, the rest of the film was just so mind-blowing, was that very opening shot with the deer, which obviously was an incredibly brilliant CGI deer, unless they trained, a deer to act like Messi from Anatomy of a Fall. But I don't think so. That shocked me when I first saw it, and it disturbed me a little bit, because I mean, you don't want to see a deer getting shot in the head. That was kind of horrible to watch. And upon the second viewing now, I realized that was the most perfect way to establish the tone of the film, because, it is a film about, getting rattled and, getting out of your comfort zone, and, the taking of innocence as well. I thought it kind of, set that up, because of course later on, the girls get abducted, and you sort of, there are going to be spoilers in this podcast, obviously. So the more you find out about the perpetrators and how they've murdered children and everything, the whole movie is about, well, one of the things it's about is the taking of innocence and the loss of innocence. And so, I really thought that opening shot set the scene so well. What did you think?
Yeah, it was weird because it's so beautiful, and the trees, and trees obviously are a theme throughout the whole movie, including the final scene, which I'll mention something that I never even paid attention to, but anyway.
Right.
But I do not like seeing animals killed in film, so that was not the best. But it was the start, so I was like, okay, see where it's going, and it very quickly gets into the story after that.
Yeah. But there's also, because obviously they don't just kill it for fun or whatever. It is for actual meat, like they are hunting and stuff, and so.
It does set up Hugh Jackman's character, who's like the sort of survivalist guy, preparing for everything.
Yeah, exactly. But it also kind of yeah, touched on, because one of the biggest themes in the film, I thought as well, was, I mean, it was this gray area between right and wrong. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, of course, when they kidnap Alex Jones, played by Paul Dano, after they are so sure, well, after Hugh Jackman's character is so sure that he did it, what he does to him and everything, you kind of like, oh man, whose side am I on? And so yeah, it was cool with that opening thing because yes, it's horrible that they killed a deer, but there is a reason behind it. And when you look into it, like every character in this film had a reason for what they were doing. Even the killers had reasons for what they were doing. Like you don't sympathize with them at all, but there were reasons. Yeah, I mean, oh man, this film is so complex, and yeah, I just loved that about it. It was really deep, and it also I love how there was so many times in the film where rain played into it to set the tone. Like to make things that much gloomier.
Oh
Um,
yeah, well that Jake mentioned that in the interview that was on purpose. When there
yeah.
were sunny days, they filmed interior scenes.
Oh, okay, right. Because I did notice that it was genuinely raining in those shots. Like, that
Mm.
wasn't just, I mean, especially towards the end when he's driving in the rain. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way they've got a rain truck, driving along, like, blasting it
Well, at
into
the
the
beginning
sky.
too, when they're running around the streets looking for the girls.
Exactly, yeah, that was real. And I just thought, yeah, brilliant job. All the production design in this film was, oh my God, this is really a case where production design sets the mood so goddamn well. You look at the apartment building that Keller used to, or still owns, where he kidnaps Alex and brings him and tortures him. The walls are just all decrepit and paint peeling off everywhere, and it just looks shitty. Like, just look at everything in this film. Every single frame in the film, there's so much attention to detail, in terms of dirtying things up or rusting or whatever.
And even too how everything's shot. Like the number of
Mm-hmm.
scenes that I just kind of, just thought that looks really cool. Like where the camera is. Like there's a scene where the forensic guys are going over the RV,
Mm-hmm.
and so it just opens and Loki's crouching talking to the guy, and the
Mm.
camera's just in the distance but lower down
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just
yeah.
sits there while they film the scene. And
Mm.
I'm like, that's an interesting angle that
Mm-hmm.
you don't normally get, and then it just stays there. And there's a few different shots where they've just, the way they decided to shoot it
Mm.
just was
Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Oh God, this because I mean this film that was cinematography was the only Oscar that it was nominated for, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it was cinematography, which yeah, by the amazing Roger Deakins, and that is just wrong. I mean, God, and even those reviews that we're watching by Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns, like they're all going on about like, oh my God, Hugh Jackman's going to get nominated for Oscars and everyone's going to get nominated for Oscars, and yeah, it never happened. Like, I just don't understand how
Yeah, that really
this.
surprises me, especially for Hugh Jackman, because,
Mm,
he had some really intense scenes.
oh my God, did he ever? I mean, yeah, and he was believable, but it just added so much reality to his character. The way, especially uh, the scene when they think that their daughter Anna is dead, and the son. Was it Ralph? I believe it was. Look, either way, that was a missed opportunity to name him Ben because, I mean, the family, the surname is Dover, so I'm going to call him Ben. So Ben's sitting in the room, in the girls' room. I'm sorry, and Keller comes in and is like, don't you say anything to your mother and stuff. And the kid, accuses him of drinking and everything. And Jackman just fucking grabs him by the collar, slams him against the wall. And the way he says, shut up, it's like, whoa, man, that's fucking insane. But it was genuine, and I really love how Detective Loki was the polar opposite. He was so calm, and especially the scenes when Hugh Jackman's going bananas, and like when they're in Loki's car after he's sort of caught him near the liquor store and stuff, and Jackman's just absolutely banging on the dashboard and everything, and Loki's just like, hey, it's like, man, I love this character. He never loses his cool. He was Brad Pitt from Bullet Train. He was like, just.
What's really
cool.
interesting, because there's like one line of backstory for that character in the whole movie where he talks about being in that boys' home.
Yeah.
And that was the only line in the script. So Jake and Denis sat there and like worked really intensely on this full backstory for him that no one knows except them.
Yeah, right.
And they just went with that, and so it's all a like a control thing, like he has his shirt buttoned up and he's hiding his tattoos and all of that, so that's his thing to be. But yeah, it's really interesting that he's just always, well, apart from that one scene, but he's generally always super calm, and especially when he's talking to people.
I loved it. You can, aside from the attention to detail in what we saw on screen, you can tell that every actor put attention to detail in their characters as well, and the portrayal of them, because like they clearly knew who these people were, and the way that they all interacted together, like the scene where the Kellers and the Birches are in and Terrence Howard gets the trumpet out and everything, like it seemed so real, it was just very believable. Everything, like, it really is a perfect film. I know you and we both can't fault this thing. I thought, like, all the exposition was natural as well. There was the only thing that was borderline, but in the end I was like, nah, it's cool, is at the end when Aunt Holly Jones is taking Keller out, towards the Trans Am, towards the pit in the ground, and she's just kind of like, explaining like, why they did everything and stuff. I kind of thought, would she do that in that situation? But yeah, it was nothing.
Well, yeah, that probably was a bit typical that the killer expects to kill the person, so they tell them all this stuff first.
Yeah. But look, it wasn't anything that detracted from the scene. Like, for me, because I didn't even notice it the first time. The first time I was like, so that's why she's doing it and how it all happened and everything. Whereas the second time round, I was kind of like, would she be saying that? Whatever, you get a pass. So, like, that is literally the only thing as far as the dialogue goes that I thought, maybe didn't seem plausible or realistic, but every single line in the film was just beautifully crafted. I love,
and there was in some cases a fair bit of improv too that came out.
Right.
Apparently there was whatever they were filming on, they could just leave it running. So they'd just leave a scene for like 10 to 15 minutes.
Wow.
And they'd just improv stuff. And so they did that in the interrogation scene.
Oh, yeah.
And also Jake Gyllenhaal watched like hours of interrogations prepping. And there was apparently one 5-hour one that he really liked. And he noticed that the detective over time would end up getting closer and closer to the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he used that as a thing, because obviously in the scene he's like right up against Alex at the wall and just not being aggressive, but just being right there.
I know. And how brilliant was Paul Dano's reaction? Like, the way he just sort of had his head turned and was like, don't touch me. Like, oh man. He likes improv too. I think it was mainly him, Jake, and Hugh. Right.
That did a bunch of improv.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want it to sound like that, because it's, you have to do improv in the right way, and not all actors. Sometimes Denis would just be like, no. Mm-hmm. But I guess they knew their characters enough to just kind of think like them and just go with it. And so, yeah, some things worked for that.
Yeah. Oh, man. I loved all of that stuff so much. But
there's a Hugh thing too.
Oh, yeah?
The scene where he's looking at the photos to see if he can identify any of the clothing. Apparently it was in the script that he got really angry and threw Loki against a wall and was like strangling
Oh,
him and saying, "This is your fault."
yeah.
But then Hugh came on set and went, "No, I don't think
Hmm.
that's right," because he's so physical with Alex. And so
Mm-hmm.
then he did it the way in the film where it's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he just says the words and then just walks away.
Oh, the way he does that, the way he taps those pictures and says, if you weren't wasting your time following me and everything, you would have found, this is on you, and then just gets up and walks. That was not chilling, but yeah, really, really deep, and yeah, so powerful. And yeah, that is a case of less is more. Like, I'm gonna throw it off to a very weird comparison, but it was for me one of my favorite lines of dialogue in The Empire Strikes Back is when Vader is leaving Cloud City, and Luke has escaped him, and everyone's basically he's basically screwed everything up. He's just walking down this corridor, and in the original version, he just says, "Bring my shuttle." And it's just like, whoa, this guy is fucking pissed off. In the special editions, there was this whole redub line where he's like, alert my Star Destroyer and bring my shuttle to come and pick me up. And don't forget, we've got to get milk on the way. Or, I don't know. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. And it just lost the intensity. This is what I mean. Like, yeah, if they did have Hugh Jackman doing all of that, it would have been so over the top and nowhere near as powerful. So I think the whole film really benefited from less is more in a lot of ways, didn't it? Because it was a very subtle film. Like, even the build-up of tension was subtle. There was so many scenes that, kind of took their time to say what they needed to say, but it never once felt boring. It never outstayed its welcome. I thought the editing was actually superlative. And watching it today, I kind of realized, because you know how I said to you that this film could creep its way into my top 10 films of all time. Like,
Yeah.
I'll have to give it time, but I kind of, yeah, to me, there are a lot of parallels between that and my number 2 most favorite movie of all time, which is Seven. Not just because it's a detective film or whatever, but you got this race against time, you've got the slow build-up of tension, you've got moments that borderline horror. Like when Loki's down in that basement of the priest's house, and he's looking around and everything, and like, and then when he finds the corpse on the ground and everything, like, that was really creepy. That was...
Yeah, that's the scene I noted, because I noted when the score came in and really added, and it did that when they're approaching the RV at the beginning. But then when he goes, like, I noted, like, I love his reaction when he moves the fridge and he kind of leans into the gap, and then his reaction when the smell hits. So then when he goes down there, and then he freaks out because the torch goes on the statues.
Yeah.
And then you just know that because he reacted to the obvious smell hitting him, he's going to find something disturbing there, and you're just waiting, and the score kind of comes in at that part. And so there's just, because, it's drawn out a bit that he's walking around looking before he finds the body there.
Yeah, so yeah, there was a lot of, I mean, and again, there were the use of rain to invoke a mood, or evoke a mood, I should say. There were a lot of things, and I think that's the reason why I am, loving this film so much, is because...
And the lighting as well.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of nighttime scenes, and just and like when David Dalmatian comes along as if you know us. We just give people names sometimes. I was messaging Dan one day and I couldn't remember what his actual last name was because I didn't have it handy. Yeah. So I just said Dalmatian. Dan knew who I was talking about, and so it kind of sticks because I keep forgetting to remember what it actually is. But the scene where he takes off from the candlelight vigil and then Loki runs across or walks across the road and is just looking over the yards for him, and then just the sensor light comes on at the house as he's running across, and just there's a sound when that happens as well that just adds to the whole thing. And then he just kind of runs like a normal guy rather than a super cop.
Yeah,
which I thought
yeah.
was interesting. And he didn't jump up straight away when he got knocked over.
And you just reminded me, actually, like, oh man, I think I'm going to do an entire podcast episode on the parallels between this film and Seven, because in Seven, there's the bit where Somerset and Mills go to John Doe's apartment. You know, John Doe's down the hallway, of course, and then, you know, Brad Pitt chases after him, and in the end, John Doe gets the drop on him by jumping from the top of a truck and stuff. Like, yeah, there's probably more than I realized that is similar with this film than Seven. But anyway, that is for a whole other episode. But yeah, but look, you know, as far as like the desperation and stuff in the film, I mean, like, it's something I guess also that I can relate to, because I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, I was in this exact situation. If you recall, there was one afternoon where I messaged you that my cat had gone missing, and oh god, this is so painful to go back to, but she was missing for a whole 7 hours, and you know, when I watch this movie, it just brings back memories of when poor little Harley went under the fence and into the complex next door for 7 whole hours. So yeah, I maybe that's another reason why this movie just, you know, taps into me. But you are giving me that look right now. Okay.
Tell you what, if you'd had Detective Loki show up to help you find your cat, I would have done anything to get down to your place.
Oh yeah, I would have been just like, you know, pacing around as, you know, find my cat! God damn it, where's my cat? And then he would have been like, hey, just get a bag of biscuits, go and shake him around, we'll find the cat. I'm going to find your cat. And yeah, she wouldn't have been gone for 7 hours. He would have found her in no time, I reckon. So yeah, man, this world needs more Detective Lokis. But anyway, now there's something else that I picked up on this time round that got me thinking. Now, this is not a flaw in the film. This is not a criticism, but it's obviously something that, man, it leaves it open for like a whole big discussion. So you've got Keller Dover. He's sitting out in the car when he's, you know, after Alex Jones has been acquitted and, you know, sent off. Alex comes out with his poor little dog, who he, you know, picks up by the frickin' neck. Like, oh my god, talk about animal cruelty in this film, and talk about getting what you deserved, Alex Jones. So of course he's then walking along and he's singing, you know, Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. Ironic, because later he'd become the Riddler. But now we need a crossover between these two films. That made me think this time around. Okay, so initially, you know, you sort of think, okay, the girls were abducted by force. They were, you know, maybe grabbed, hands over the mouths, taken into the RV, which I love that red herring as well, by the way, when they clean the RV, the forensic team, and don't find a single thing. And it's like, oh, okay, so it wasn't the RV. But then later on, it's revealed that, yes, it was. But so you'd sort of think that they were taken by force. But if Alex Jones knows that song, there's got to be a reason why he's heard it, which makes me think that the girls were enticed into the RV, you know, with, I don't know, food, toys, whatever or something, and they actually, you know, were friendly to them and stuff, and the girls sang that song and stuff. So, yeah, like, isn't that interesting? Like,
yeah, well, that's what I thought, that because he, you know, is like a 10-year-old sort of, then he probably just was like, oh, some kids to hang out with, and was having, and because they were so interested in the RV, so of course he would have been like, hey, check this out, and they would have been fine hanging out until, you know, they couldn't leave.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, like, that just...
But I did also think at that stage on my first watch, I was like, does he really have the IQ of a 10-year-old? Like, I guess they must have looked up records or something, but I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking he just got interrogated and let go. And, you know, does he really, or was he just acting? Is he involved? Because of the dog thing.
No, he really does. If you look towards the end, when Loki is sitting in, oh, where was he? Was it the hospital? And he's got a newspaper, which is revealed that Alex Jones Webb. If you, yeah, okay, so I paused it and read the article, and yeah, it says something about how Alex Jones was like, pumped full of like psycho drugs and stuff, when he was a kid, and it messed him up, and like, yeah, he really was afflicted.
Because I did wonder, like obviously something happened to him when he got abducted, but I was wondering like what it was, but I didn't think. But of course, because they're drugging them all, so
yeah, exactly.
Which is why they had to rush the girl to the hospital to save her.
But I just thought that was fascinating that, it's that whole thing of, show don't tell, which is the number one rule of screenwriting. Like, this is an extreme case. This is like, just giving you this little clue of what may have happened, but then you just develop it in your head yourself.
The interview I was watching, the interviewer mentioned there was some screenwriter who apparently was quite angry that Loki had tattoos and they kept them covered and never explained anything about them.
Oh my God! Wow. No, there are. I mean, look, there are obviously times in films that you do want things explained a bit more,
but it's just like a character thing. It has nothing to do with the story, and
exactly.
That's the point too. Is that Loki is a mysterious character. We get that one line, a backstory, and that's all we know. Oh, and that he doesn't have anyone because he was in the Chinese restaurant on his own on Thanksgiving. That's kind of all that you have, and that's the point.
Well, even later on, his captain says to him, to let the case go, go find himself a girl and, like live happily ever after, so to speak. But yeah, so no, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, on the subject of Alex Jones, though, like I still, that moment where, he's captured in that crappy apartment bathroom and everything, and Nancy, played by Viola Davis, comes in and lifts the bag off his head. That still shocks me. That was another one of those scenes because she's slowly lifting it up, and then when she takes it off, you can't see him because it's blocked reaction by the sink. Yeah, and then it cuts to her reaction, and then it shows you what she's looking at. Because at first, the first time I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, are we actually going to see it, or are they going to be that mysterious that they leave it vague?" Which, honestly, I would have actually been fine with, like, because it's that thing of you see someone's extreme reaction, you think, "Oh my God, how bad is it?" And then your brain always comes up with something even worse. But no, that was insane, and how this movie did not get a nomination for Best Makeup at the Oscars that year is beyond me, because it did
win awards for that at other awards, though. I think that's the only thing that it won awards for in any awards. It was nominated for other things, but I think only the hair and makeup got it. Yeah, right.
But because not only was it extremely good makeup, but it really made you feel something. And by then, you're just... I mean, that's what I mean about this whole duality of the film, is that, you start feeling really sorry for Alex Jones. And of course, by then you're like, well, holy shit, did he do it or didn't he do it? And you even kind of thinking, especially when David Dalmatian comes into it, you're like, oh my God, no, he didn't have anything to do with it. But then by the end of it, you realize he kind of did. Like,
yeah, it's that thing of he was involved, but because of his like issues and everything, like, you can't really say he was responsible. And then I always wondered too, like, why he never tried to talk or say anything. Like, that his aunt had such a hold on him that he wouldn't say. I thought it was interesting watching back when Loki goes round to the house after Keller said that he said the line at the car park and talking to him. And then I just thought it was really funny that he's said about the aunt and was like, oh, you don't want to hurt her or her to be charged or whatever. And he just kind of looks, and with all the knowledge, you're like, is he thinking, oh, but I kind of do? And then Loki's like, said something else, and it's like he kind of went, oh, that's right, I have to say I don't want that. And so then he's like, no.
Yeah,
Oh no,
yeah.
I think he says you love your aunt, don't you? And he kind of doesn't say anything. And then he says about you wouldn't want her to go to jail. And then he says no.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe I misheard. I thought he said you wouldn't want to go to jail and like implying her to be alone. But either way, like it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like that, Alex Jones was such a fascinating character. Not just the way that the plot, tricked you and stuff like that, but just everything about him. And yeah, the fact that he was tortured beyond belief in that, like what Keller did to him was horrible. But he never talked, until like towards the end where he started mentioning about the maze. But even then, he didn't say anything like, they're at the house, like, just like, get me out of here. They're at the house. So yeah, no, that was really, really fascinating. And it was also fascinating and it took me by absolute surprise the first time I watched it. When when he's just, strapped up there and everything, and Nancy undoes his wrists, the ropes on his wrists or whatever, and he's just like, help me. But then, of course, he attacks her, gets up, smashes the window, grabs a shard of glass and starts attacking people, and it's just like, what is going on with this guy? Like, he's just had the beating of a lifetime. He's, barely able to stand, and yet he musters up that adrenaline to do that, which was, yeah, kind of a shocking moment. Did that just completely take you by surprise when you first watched it?
Yeah, and it's that whole because on the first watch, I can't remember when it ended, but there was a good part of the film where I was like, does he have anything to do with it, or is he completely innocent and having all this horrible stuff happen?
Yeah.
And so yeah, when that happened, but then of course afterwards you're like, no, he just is totally freaking out and has a chance to escape. So
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, the big question is, if you were in that situation, would you go to lengths like Hugh Jackman did? Because that movie does make you think, doesn't it? Because obviously Keller totally believed, and he was right. I mean, Alex did know where the girls were. He was actually right. And you just kind of think to yourself, like, would I do, like, if my cat was kidnapped and held somewhere, would I go to those lengths? And yeah, I probably would. I don't know. Like, how about you?
no, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, it's one of those things you can't say for sure, but I'm so not a violent person that I can't imagine it coming out of nowhere and happening. And then the guilt would be so much, especially if it was a situation like this where he wasn't in the end. But even like Hugh Jackman, is like a religious guy, and then by the later on in the end, he's like reciting the Lord's Prayer, but he stumbles because he can't say "as we forgive others" because he's not forgiving, and so he can't get the word "forgive" out. And he tries a couple of times.
That. Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I guess it's hard to tell if you don't have kids and you're not a parent and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call, because if you knew that somebody was guilty of something and you were that desperate, I mean,
but then you get your kid back and you're going to jail because you were a terrible person.
Yeah, but you got your kid back. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, in this case, he would have got his kid back anyway. Like he.
Oh, but he didn't know. So yeah. This is what I mean. This whole movie is, what is right, what is wrong, who is good, who is evil. Everybody has a reason for why they do things. But look, if you guys listening to this, what are your thoughts on this? Find us on the socials. Google Dan and Frankie Go to Hollywood, and you can find us on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. Or you can email us at danandfrankiepodcast at either Outlook or gmail.com. We have two email addresses now because we have just been trying to keep up with the inundation of emails that have been flooding in from you guys, and Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, would you guys do what Keller Dover did? Would you, if you had kids and they went missing, or a cat? Yeah, did he do the right thing? But it's also, I guess, another thing is, like the movie really touched on what motivates people to do cruel things. So, you got in the case of Keller Dover, his daughter's gone missing. He's sure that Alex Jones has done it, so that's motivated him to do cruel things. Holly Jones and her deceased husband, Isaac, they had a war against God because they lost a kid to cancer, and so if they can't have a kid, no one else can, which I thought was fascinating. But the one thing that I was really thinking about the second time I watched it, so Bob Taylor, played by David Dalmatian, brilliantly, why did he do the things he did? I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, hang on a second, because, this dude was going around grabbing the items of clothing from the respective houses, covering them in pig's blood, going and buying children's clothes, and then he had, like, the mannequins in the yard and stuff.
Didn't they say, though, that he had been abducted?
It
was kind of like he was wanting to sort of keep it going, so he was doing it. So he was getting the mannequins, getting the clothes, putting the pig's blood on, and then I imagine it's just because this became a big news story, then he's like, oh, I will go and get their clothes to put in my collection. I don't know what the snakes had to do with anything. Although I know, I didn't look into it, but the interviewer in the thing I was watching mentioned that apparently there's some historical thing with Loki and snakes.
Oh, okay. Well, they did also mention that Isaac, the deceased father who was in the priest's basement, used to keep snakes. So there was that.
Okay, so maybe he just got into having snakes as well.
Yeah. But yeah, it was the sort of thing I was kind of thinking like, Bobby Taylor, well, okay, what are you doing here? Because it is a very complex film. And the first time I watched it, I kind of brushed over that and, it didn't, I just kind of thought like, is he trying to, frame himself to take the weight off, his former, family, so to speak. But no, I looked into it and there was an interesting discussion on Reddit that I was looking into, and it went really deep into the whole mazes thing as well, because there was that thing when he was abducted, and there's the whole thing of if you finish the mazes you can go, but it's revealed that the final maze is unfinishable, just to mess with the kids or whatever. But for whatever reason, however Bobby Taylor managed to escape or was set free or anything like that, I think the reason why that he had all those mazes on his walls, which was seriously goddamn creepy. Like, my God, that is the sign of a twisted mind. Was because, the film title, Prisoners, everyone in this film is a prisoner in a way of something. And so his prison was that he was still there. He was still that abducted kid who couldn't finish the maze. And so, that was, made it pretty clear as to why he was doing what he was doing. But, that was just another big red herring as well. Like, everything from when Loki goes down into the Dover's basement and he sees the half bag of lye, and, it's like, ooh, what's that all about? It was just because their dog died last year, But there were so many red herrings and stuff. But what you were saying with the snakes, though, how freaking cool was Loki in that scene when he's banging open the boxes. The first time he's just like, whoa, shit, snakes. Wouldn't you just run the hell out of there? Like,
Or close it before you go to the next one, but he just leaves them all open so all the snakes can roam free.
He's fucking walking around, like, banging these boxes open, getting evidence out and stuff, well, what he thinks is evidence, and the snakes are just going over his feet and stuff. Like, my God, this guy, seriously,
that whole scene, I loved that scene, like when he knocks on the door and the interaction between the two of them, and how he's just all smiling and like, why did you run away from me? And then just at one point, he just suddenly, his face just goes all like blank and serious. It was such a cool
Yeah.
scene, and then
Oh
bangs the
man.
door and shoves him on the wall and all of that.
Yeah, yeah. The way that Dalmatian played that role
Yeah.
was again so believable.
Yeah.
Dalmatian, I know, was so believable. Like everyone, yeah, like I said before, was just so real in this thing. And even things like when Bob Taylor commits suicide in the interrogation room. God, that looked real. Like
Yeah.
I have actually seen that like videos of people blowing their heads off in real life, and I can tell you that was so realistic. Even the way that his body hit the floor and slumped and everything, just it looked real. It shocked me, because it kind of reminded me of the stuff that I've seen in the past. Like,
That's
yeah,
disturbing. But yeah,
yeah,
it's like a lot of movies that show that they like cut away at the last moment and will just show like the blood hitting the wall or
yeah,
something. But
yeah,
that
yeah.
was just like fully front on
Ah,
him for the
yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah, it was shocking. That's what I mean. There were a lot of shock moments in the film that were, kind of. When I say subtle, I don't mean. I mean, watching someone put a freaking gun in their mouth and eat a bullet isn't subtle, but just in terms of reflecting on the plot, like the taking the bag off Alex's head, or things like that. Like there were shocking moments, but they were just so freaking well done. And so, well, what were your thoughts on the revelation when Holly was revealed as the killer? Like that whole scene. How much did you absolutely love that?
Yeah, that was so good. I don't think I even thought of her until they made it obvious. Like I just
Yeah.
didn't expect it. And yeah, that was really good. And Melissa
Yeah.
Leo was so good playing
Oh, she's
that role.
brilliant. Yeah, especially the well, again, duality. Like she for most of the movie seems quite pleasant and everything, but when she reveals that she didn't burn her hand and she has a gun under that towel,
Like
like
I knew she didn't burn her hand, but I was not expecting her
right,
to pull out a gun. But it was just,
yeah,
she
yeah,
comes with her hand covered to the door. You're like, oh yeah, something's going on. But
right,
yeah, I
right.
didn't expect it to be that she was going to pull out a gun.
Yeah, but oh man, she turned nasty, but in a really subtle way. Like, she was evil. She was one of the most evil characters I've seen in a film
What's
in a
really
long time.
funny, I was watching a behind the scenes video that was just showing all different things being filmed. And there was a scene in that where it was just showing her and Hugh Jackman talking between takes in the car
Ah,
park
right.
scene.
Yeah.
And they're just like standing there laughing and having a good time. And it was just so weird to see her just laughing and just being normal
Oh,
because
yeah, yeah.
of that character.
Yeah, for sure. If I may interject with an anecdote, there was one time I got cast in a short film as a drunken, abusive dad. And the whole scene revolved around my kid, who was played by this brilliant little child actor. No idea what his name was because this is going back to, I think, 2009. And it was a really dark, intense film. Like, I mean, I had to act really menacing, because I was this drunk, abusive dad who, was about to beat the shit out of his kid and all this. Like, it was really full on subject matter. As soon as the director yelled cut, me and this kid got along so well. And, this was 2009. Like, it had only been like a couple of years since the first Transformers film came out. And this kid was obsessed with Transformers. And so we were just laughing and joking and talking about Transformers and, all this sort of stuff. And then, as soon as they were like, okay, everybody get ready and action, it'd be like, you little fuck. So yeah, it was I guess kind of the same sort of thing, and I always love that, in acting, like, performers can do that, just snap into a character and be like that. So yeah, I'll have to watch all this stuff that you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I'll send you links. I sent you a couple because there was an interview I sent you, just one of the short ones with Hugh and Jake, and they kind of were doing a bit, about
Right.
how hard it was to work with each other and all of that. So that's always fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But back to Aunt Holly and how fucking disturbing she was. That scene where Loki turns up to the house at the end, and you're sort of wondering, oh, what's going to happen? And then you just see Holly, going into a room, like unlocking a door and going into a room, and you're sort of thinking, well, where's she going? And then of course, Loki enters the house and is calling out, and there's no answer. And I love that moment as well when he looks at the photo of Isaac with the medallion.
I was just going to mention that. I love his reaction when he just suddenly works out what's going on, and he just has that look on his face, and then he gets super serious looking around the room, figuring out where to go.
That look on his face just said so much about, oh my God, the answer was right here all along, because if he had seen that earlier in the film, like, it would have changed things, I loved that moment. But yeah, then it's revealed that Holly is in the room, like with a needle at Anna's arm with, I don't know what she was putting in her. It's irrelevant, I guess, but and you sort of think, like, okay, Hollywood movie, Loki's going to come and save the day before Anna gets drugged. No. Like, she actually gets drugged and is about to die, before Holly gets up, and, there's a brief gunfight and she gets killed. And also her line of dialogue about, where she's just casually saying, make sure they cremate me, don't bury me in a box and everything. It's like, that's disturbing. Like, that was one of the most disturbing scenes in the film, I thought. The fact that this film just delivered from start to finish like that.
And then Loki gets shot in the head, and so you see the little blood spatter on the wall behind.
Yeah, and you're thinking, oh no, but, obviously it was just a graze, but, bad enough that he could barely see, Yeah,
well then, that's the whole driving scene then, that you just kind of think, oh, he's wiping the blood off his face, it's fine. But then as it goes along, you realize how bad it is that he starts losing his vision and everything.
Yeah. Do you know, I don't know if you saw in any of the interview stuff that you saw, when he gets out of the car and slips on the ice and falls on his ass, like when he, delivers Anna to the emergency room, do you know if that was actually real or...
I don't know. I wondered that when I watched it, because I'm like, was he just, off balance because that was the thing, and then he slipped? Or, it could be either way. It could have just happened and they just went with it because it was a good scene. He did say that that's was the hardest scene that he'd done in his career.
Oh,
and
really?
I think partly because the character of Loki was, like a little bit jealous sort of the whole thing of having the father that loves their child so much, and so he's all about saving the kids because he wants the families to not have the pain that they've got with it, and because he never had the family or whatever. And he said that he was also thinking about like people in his real life and stuff, so he just said that was hard to film, but
right, yeah.
But that was such a gripping scene.
Oh, was it ever? I do hope him falling on his ass like that was actually a happy accident that they caught on film, because that was brilliant. It just, I don't know, just again made the scene more realistic, But yeah.
It does happen, like in lots of things that you'll hear. Even in Black Books, I know there was a scene where Bernard walks around his desk and he trips over something and just keeps going. And when you listen to it with the commentary, you find out that wasn't meant to happen.
Oh, wow.
He just tripped as he was walking around. So I'm sure there's things like that happen. And as long as everyone keeps going with the scene, it might end up staying in there.
Yeah. But there was one other thing that I noticed when Loki's in the hospital and he's reading the newspaper about how Alex Jones was reunited with his family after 26 years, I think it was. I looked on the front page, and on the bottom left, there's an article with a headline that says, "Car crash sends 2 to hospital." And I sort of thought to myself, now hang on, we've just seen this thing where Loki's been driving maniacally and, going through intersections where cars are just screeching and, skidding around and, all this sort of stuff. Like, that happened twice, and then there was another sort of minor bit where he crosses lanes and someone beeps at him or whatever. But I paused and I actually read the article, and it was pretty vague, and like they did this thing, just to sort of, fill in the paper. They actually just repeated that same text 3 times. But It was just about a head-on collision that happened between, I think, a teenage driver and an elderly driver or something. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, oh, man, I hope it says something maybe about, after a, high-speed police car went through or something like that. It didn't, but I'm willing to bet that it was related to that because it said the crash happened the previous night. And I'm just thinking to myself, that is so cool. I mean, honestly, like, yeah, what do you reckon? I mean, it's got to be pertaining to
I
that,
did notice
right?
that headline, and I did wonder if because there's so many things in the movie that mean something. So I'm
Yeah.
like, they would have been thinking about what their headlines would be. I noticed on the other side they had one about strange happenings in cases or something like that. I didn't actually pause it to properly look at it like you
Right,
did.
right. Yeah, well, I got curious. But that's one thing that I learned in, I think, one of the film classes I once went to, is that in a film, everything that you see on screen, the director wants you to see. There's nothing to chance or whatever. Like, so yeah, I reckon that it had something to do with that. But yeah, but
Yeah, I definitely need to send you this half-hour interview I watched because
yeah, yeah.
Jake talks a lot about Denis and his like decisions and stuff for the film. So yeah, definitely all intentional things.
Yeah, right. No, I'm very keen to see that. Yeah, this film, I oh man, this was such a surprise. I never realized that this film was as good as it is, and yeah, I know like my friend Fraser Jubb, who is a very good friend of the show. He owned the Blu-ray for several years and had never watched it, and he watched it earlier today, and oh my god, he's been raving about it. He's given it 5 stars on Letterboxd.
Well, I figured that he would when you told me that he said Hugh Jackman was his favorite actor working today. I was like, well, if you like Hugh Jackman that much, then you're gonna love his performance in this
Yeah,
film.
yeah. That was actually another thing, though, that I was discussing with him earlier today that I think is definitely worth bringing up. So he pointed me in the direction of an article online, and it was talking about how there was an alternate ending that was filmed. Do you know about that?
No.
Okay, so apparently they actually did film an ending where Loki goes over and moves the car and rescues Hugh Jackman and rides off into the sunset with him, so to speak. And then they tested it or whatever and decided to go with the ending that we got. But the article kept referring to the one that we've seen as an ambiguous ending.
I saw something about that, and I'm like, it's not ambiguous.
I
It's
didn't think so
it
either.
just it doesn't finish the thing, but you know that
Yeah.
Loki's heard the sound, and you know from what you've seen in the movie that he's not gonna give up till he figures out what that is. So
Well,
you
that's
know
the
he's gonna
thing.
find him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I completely agree. So this article was on Screen Rant, and yeah, it's called "Why the Alternate Ending Wasn't Right for the Film." But yeah, it goes on. Like the original ending of Prisoners is intentionally ambiguous, fitting the movie's themes, while the alternate ending would have provided clear-cut answers. And I'm reading
No.
this, and I'm just like, no,
It would
like,
have just shown you what you know is already coming and you don't need to see because you know what's going to happen.
yeah,
It
yeah,
wouldn't add
yeah,
anything. But
yeah.
I really like the ending. And the other thing I was going to say, because Jake Gyllenhaal said he didn't even think about it until he watched it, but right at the end, not the very final scene, but just before that, before he turns, so it's a shot of the back of his head, but there's a tree lit up behind him. So he was
Oh,
like, so
right.
it ends with the tree, just like the start. And I know there's a there's
Okay.
like a scene when the trumpet playing is happening and there's just a shot of the exterior, but it's
Yeah,
like a tree's right there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there's like, so and then I started noticing then all the times that it seemed to be focusing on tree shots.
Right, because that one that you were just talking about with the trumpet, that's the moment that it's, the girls, there's something gone wrong because they've gone back to the house to get the red whistle, and yeah, it cuts to the outside of the Dover's house and it's focused on those trees, and there's just that kind of ominous sound or music.
Yeah.
So that's the moment that you know that something's gone wrong. But yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't really think about that
Yeah,
with the
I'm not
trees.
sure what all the tree meanings are. Although Jake did at once say like family tree, so I don't know if that's some kind of thing
Oh, okay, yeah,
um,
that's
of how
interesting.
it all fits in. But who
Yeah,
knows? Because there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of stuff that could mean things.
I'll tell you who knows. Denis knows. But yeah, no, I didn't think it was ambiguous at all, that ending.
No.
Like, yeah, this Screen Rant article says prisoners keeps an ambiguous ending that allows the audience to determine if Loki rescued Dover and what their interaction entailed. Prisoners' alternate ending left nothing up to the imagination. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's already revealed that Keller's going to do time. Like, they've talked about that. Well,
Yeah. Well,
probably.
you know that he will because I mean he did a lot of harm to Alex.
Oh yeah, oh there's no doubt about that. So yeah, I think
Well,
Loki.
the thing is, like, because you know Loki's like, "Oh, did I hear something?" And it's like a few times, so you know he definitely heard it. So yeah, he definitely knows something's going on. Yeah, you don't need to see him discovering. Like you know he's there,
Yeah,
so you
absolutely.
know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no,
But
I
it
completely
wasn't
agree.
needed, and that was
Yeah,
just a really cool thing to just end like that.
man, it's like I said in the last episode. Like that ending, I was sitting there just thinking to myself, wouldn't it be cool if, because we don't need to see anymore, wouldn't it be cool if it just cut to black right now? And when it did, yeah, I mean, I'm watching it. What was it like? I don't know what time in of ungodly hour of the morning it was, but yeah, I threw my hands in the air, exclaimed "yes!" and just it was the perfect ending to the perfect film. Um, yeah, and I'm just so grateful that it is in our lives now. This little movie, so yeah. I don't know. Well, that's about it.
Oh, one other thing I didn't mention. Apparently, when Jake read the script, he had the thought of Loki having some kind of facial tic. And he said, you know, sometimes when actors think of that, it's just a terrible idea. But he mentioned it to Denny, who was interested in it. And he was doing a play at the time because he only had a week between the show ending and filming starting. So he tested it out on a couple of his performances
Right,
doing
right.
it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it became a thing with the character.
Yeah, no, that was really awesome, and yeah, again, it just added some reality to the character. It wasn't just like
And
a
it was like a kind of went with the backstory thing.
yeah,
Just yeah, made him so. And I've never been so interested in a character. I'm like, I just want a whole like franchise of just like every movie. It's another case that Loki's working on.
you want the Loki verse, don't you?
Yeah.
The Loki cinematic universe. All right. Well, you never know, as Grandma Manning used to say.
And the other thing Jake mentioned, the interviewer was trying to say, you know, obviously box office success is like good, but not a way to tell if a movie's good or whatever, and what he would do. And he said that he's never received as many texts and emails from people about their response to the character and their love
Oh
of the
wow.
movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So it seems like it was a big deal, even though we missed it somehow in
Yeah,
2013.
I know. Look, this is definitely a case of better late than never, isn't it? Because, yeah, I watched this thing and I just could not believe that I'd never seen it before. More than that, I couldn't believe that it was a cheesy action film with Schwarzenegger and Stallone this whole time. Because,
Well, lucky you got interested and looked at it and didn't just think that my new all-time favorite and best movie of the year was Escape Plan.
I know. I'm so.
I have to say
about that.
too that Denise films I've seen June and Arrival, which I both really liked. I have seen Enemy, which I didn't like as much as a lot of people. I gave it 3.5 stars,
Right.
but I really want to revisit it now because I know it's a bit weird, and it was mentioned too because of course Jake's in that as well, and said it, you know, the whole sort of cyclical.
Sicky licky. Cyclical. Yeah.
Like Denis really wanted to do a film like that you know, once it finishes, it can start again. And he said, anywhere you can go in and just keep going. And I'm like, I think too that there was a big thing that I heard about the film. And it's one of those cases where you get told about something in a film and it doesn't happen till the end. So you kind of spend the whole film waiting for this thing that's not till at the end.
Right.
So, I'm going to reevaluate that. But then I also want to see his other films now because these ones I have seen have been so good. I mean, Sicario's been on my radar for a long time anyway.
Well, here's the thing. I must admit I'm a little bit hit and miss with the works of young Denis. I have seen Sicario. I actually own it for some reason. I remember watching it and liking it. I don't really remember it all that well. I wasn't a fan of Arrival. I didn't.
Arrival is a masterpiece.
Yeah, well, you like Christopher Nolan as well. But look, no, I went to the movies to see that. I'm pretty sure there's a review of it on my channel, Movie Talk with Jan Jensen. And I was very ho-hum about it.
I was in awe at the cinema watching it.
Yeah, well, you know.
Then again, you didn't like Interstellar, so it's like...
God, no.
It's a weird kind of space thing.
Blade Runner 2040 something, 9. I actually didn't mind that one. I thought it was a hell of a lot better than the first, which I think is one of the most boring films of all time. That is not something that I am going to be like, oh, well, you know, it's okay just to appease all the mega legions of fans who love it. I think the original Blade Runner is a sedative. So there you go. I said it. Dune Part 1 I really liked, of course, which was the first movie that you and I ever went to a premiere for.
And the first time we met in person.
And a day that you deeply regret. Those are the only films of his that I've seen. So, yeah. I mean, I guess Arrival's the only one that I really wasn't a fan of. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, Sicario, I don't really remember it. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway...
And this also will have me exploring Jake Gyllenhaal's filmography. And interesting, he's apparently super into like things that we don't know or don't see, and like the unknown and everything. And apparently he got super obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe at an age that was not appropriate for having such a love of Edgar Allan Poe. Right. But I think maybe that's why some of his films sound interesting, because I guess he's drawn... I mean, like Source Code I watched last night, and that's kind of, you know, the unknown and repeating and stuff going on with like layers to things and stuff. So it seems to be an interest for him.
Am I remembering correctly? Was Prisoners based on an Edgar Allan Poe story? I'm pretty sure I read somewhere, maybe it was on Wikipedia, that I mean, obviously not directly based on, but like loosely based on an Edgar Allan Poe tale. Here we go.
Inspiration from a medley of real-life events, interviews, and crime stories.
Aaron Guzakovsky, who I'm assuming was the writer, yes he was, wrote the script for the 2009 annual Blacklist, and based on a short story he wrote involving a father whose kid was struck by a hit-and-run driver, and then puts the guy in a well in his backyard. That short story was partially inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. So there you go. There's a little bit of a link there with old Jakey Poo. Yeah. So yeah. That's about all I've got to say about Prisoners, which is pretty amazing, being that for one film we've just talked over an hour. But that's what we do. Did you have any final things?
The other thing too was that casting a younger detective was also part of it. Like that Hugh Jackman's character kind of doesn't trust him straight away.
Yeah,
because,
right,
it
right.
was just young guys coming in, probably not a lot of experience to find his kid. So it kind of added
Yeah.
to their dynamic that there was that going on. But I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
Also, probably because Hugh just like went off at him the first time they met,
So
and then he was like, "Please calm down."
there you go, people. If you're a fan of Prisoners, do what Frankie does and go and watch lots of YouTube videos because there's some really interesting stuff out there. So, yeah. All right. Well, I'm done. Are you done?
That's everything I think I had to say.
Brilliant. All right. Well, for everybody who has listened to this, thank you very much for listening. And yeah, good on you for being a Prisoners fan. And well, we're assuming you are. If you are listening to this podcast and you haven't seen the film, there may be a problem there because we've just given away a lot of stuff about
Well,
the
that's
film.
the other thing to mention is I have watched this sort of 2.5 times now because I did have time left on my rental period the first time I saw it, and I didn't have time to watch it again, so I fast forwarded some bits
Right.
and just watched the best bits, and then I watched it again today, and even when the mystery element is gone from the first watch and you know exactly everything that's going to happen, it's still so captivating. And I guess you can appreciate more, like look for things and just
Oh, yeah.
appreciate stuff more because your brain has less to do with the figuring out what's going on when you know what's going on. And even the drive it to the hospital at the end that had me on the edge of my seat the first time I watched it. And even now, knowing exactly what's going to happen and everything that's going on, it's still so gripping and it still kind of gets the adrenaline going that he has to make this drive and not crash. And it's like, I
Yeah.
worry he's going to crash every time I watch it, even though I know that he doesn't.
Well, that's like I was saying before. I noticed more the second time around, and had more questions in my head about things, and because the first time around is one of those experiences where it just blows your mind, and you're just so captivated and engrossed in what you're watching that you don't really have a lot of time to process things too deeply, but. That second time around, I was able to, and especially because I was taking notes, because I was writing down, questions that I had and things like that. But but I would still definitely recommend watching it before listening to this podcast episode, though. Which,
I mean that should be fairly obvious. We'll put it in the notes and everything.
Yeah. Although
we
if
did
you
say at the beginning we were going to spoil things.
Yeah, if you have gotten to the end of this and you have never seen the film before, it's probably too late now, I'd say. But anyway.
I don't think anyone would have.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, thank you very much to everybody for tuning in. We hope you've had a fun time and enjoyed it. And yes, if you want to drop your thoughts and talk to us about Prisoners, as I said before, you can find us on all the socials. If you Google Dan and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, or Go to Hollywood, I should say, because there's two of us, you will be able to find us. It all pops up there. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, or you can email us at danandfrankiepodcast at either Gmail or Outlook.com. Probably go to Gmail because Frankie will be dealing with those emails, and that'll mean one less thing I need to do. So there you go. You're about to get flooded with emails, young lady. Anyway, all right. Well, we will be back for our next proper episode next Friday, where we will be discussing This Is Spinal Tap and Brain Scan and Speed. So
it's our medical episode.
It's our medical episode. Yes,
we somehow missed at the time that we announced the movies.
I know. We've got 2 procedures and a drug. So yeah. Dear, oh dear. So yeah, that's going to be lots of fun. So yeah, we will catch you then. Until next time, watch lots of movies, watch Prisoners again, and bye for now.